Hello, welcome to Books and Brews
the place where beer and literature meet.
with your host, the seer of the beer, Chris Powell.
And Laura Vosica, author of the Bluebells Chronicles.
Each month, we invite a guest author to read their words and talk about writing while sipping beer specially paired with their work. This month's guest is Juliet Cutler.
So sit back
Pop a cold one
and dive into some books.
and brews. All right, welcome to Books and Brews, episode number 83, with our guest Juliet Cutler. Laura, what have you been doing this month? What have you been doing?
What have
this
I
month?
not been doing? Well, Juliet knows what I've been doing because we had to cancel our first attempt because I was busy talking to my farmhand. The door from the garage into the mudroom was wide open when I started talking to him. I turned to go into the house and walked smack into the edge of the door, and I'm pretty sure I had a concussion for the first time in my life. So that was not fun. Everybody
imagine.
was in our house. The cleaners were here. Our farmhand Marshall was here. I was trying to manage everything, and I just smashed right into it, and I had tears coming out of my eyes. They all saw it, and I told Chris it's a good thing I had 3 witnesses. But amazingly, almost miraculously, I did not bruise at all.
It's true.
I
Yeah.
really thought half my face was going to be black and blue, and I thought you were going to have some splaining to do.
Right, yeah. Honest, I
But-
didn't do this. I wasn't even there.
Right.
You know?
So, but yeah, we took the top off the Jeep, so that was exciting. Rode around yesterday with after Marshall helped us take all 4 doors off. Then he broke it to me. I'm not sure it's entirely legal to drive like this, and I had to drive him home.
So she was a rebel.
Thanks, Marshall. Thanks for telling me after you took all the doors off. But I passed about 6 cops. Nobody stopped me, so I guess it is legal.
It is Eastern Tennessee. It's not like anybody's going to really have anything.
Pretty much
you know.
everything's legal here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we got a lot of work done in the rabbit hutch, so we now have some beautiful he took out a wall, and so it had been kind of an unpleasant place to be because it was built as a dog run, so it had 3 separate rooms to either separate the dogs or let them breed. And for rabbits, each room was about that much too big for more cages, so he took out one of the walls. And now it's just very open and airy and beautiful. And so it's much more pleasant to be in.
Did you get a
So-
chance to read anything this month with all that
I
activity?
did. Yeah. I tried to read a Nicholas Sparks book, and I can't remember the name. Sounds interesting. And yeah, I don't remember the name of the book, but it sounds like at least he's implying it's based on a true story. And so I actually don't know if it really is or if that's just part of the story of the story, is to say it's based on a true story. I feel like I'm looking at myself in multiple mirrors, trying to ponder that. And then I've been reading a very interesting book that's actually 4 volumes called The Mystical City of God by Mary of Agreda from the 1600s. So how about you? Anything interesting?
Mostly quantum here, there, and everywhere.
Yeah.
I've been at the New York Stock Exchange this month, doing a briefing there to stock analysts. I was at the DC Chambers Blockchain Summit, also doing a panel discussion on quantum. I happen to be known as Dr. Q at work because I'm in charge of quantum science, but it's been a very fun month in handling all that, although there was a lot of travel and not all of it was always on time. We'll just put it that
I
way.
shoveled rabbit poop. I'm smart too.
It's smart enough to keep the rabbit poop out of the coop.
Right, yeah.
A good thing to do.
That's our ongoing joke. So
Yes.
yeah.
Do we happen to have an interesting guest this month,
We
Laura?
do. In fact, we are basically taking a trip to Africa, which not too long ago I talked to Rebecca M. Zorno, and we also talked about her travels to Africa. So I have not had this many people coming to me from Africa and the whole history of Books and Brews. And
Indeed, that's true.
yeah, now twice in about 3-4 months. So we have with us Juliet Cutler. She is a writer, educator, and a designer of award-winning exhibits for museums, parks, and cultural centers around the world. In 1999 and 2000, she lived in Tanzania, where she taught English at the first school for, is it pronounced Maasai?
Correct. Yep.
Maasai girls in East Africa. In her first book, Among the Maasai, Juliet recounts her experiences as a young American teacher working in a context where women and girls face unimaginable challenges. 25 years later, she illustrates the positive impacts of educating women and girls in her second book, Lessons in Hope, which features the stories of Maasai women working in education, healthcare, government, nonprofits, and business. Juliet's writing has received numerous awards, including the Independent Publisher Book Award, the National Indie Excellence Award, and the IBPA Book Award, one of the highest American honors for independently published books. Juliet holds a Master of Arts in English from Colorado State University and a Bachelor of Science in Education from the University of North Dakota, which happens to be where my son briefly attended college and in fact still lives there. So she currently lives with her husband, Mark, near Atlanta. She regularly travels to Tanzania to support causes that uplift Maasai women and girls. All proceeds from the sales of her books support these causes. So welcome, Juliet.
I was wondering whether there's a position for the work you do in museums that could be called perhaps a dioramist or something like that, or is there something that's,
I
like
would
an
say
exhibit engineer?
I work with dioramists, I would say. So my work is more around storytelling and content development,
Oh,
but
neat.
I work with a whole host of other specialists who build dioramas and display cases and audiovisual pieces. So yes.
Very neat.
We are ready for drink number one.
It sounds wonderful. I understand that there was going to be a wonderful selection of African beers for us to select from, but then we found getting them into this part of the country was going to require something equivalent to probably an African country's gross national product. So we decided we would stick perhaps with some top African cocktails. So hopefully these will, help to align with your reading and reinforce it and things like that. The first one I have is, of course, called the Hakuna Matata cocktail, because why wouldn't it be, right? And we're going to start with a couple of tumblers here, where I'm going to start off with some grenadine, which gives it a nice bright red and yet somewhat sweet character. And then we're going to get some spiced rum, and I happen to be using a black spiced rum called the Kraken, which is really nice. It's got a really neat flavor to it. And then we're going to use some coconut rum to go
wow.
with the Kraken and the grenadine, and also some banana liqueur. So we're trying to stay a little bit tropical here.
Yeah. So Hakuna Matata actually is Swahili, and it means, I think everyone knows what it means from The Lion King, right? But
I'm
it
not
does
sure if I remember.
it means no worries, no trouble.
That's right. It's in the song, isn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't the irony, though, that in the movie the lions discover all sorts of worries and trauma?
They do. Yeah.
So, well, here we go. We have our Hakuna Matata with the pineapple juice added in.
So,
Cheers.
Cheers indeed. Well, that's got a neat flavor. Very tropical.
So, full disclosure, we actually forgot to get the banana liqueur.
But I think this actually works out okay, though, the way it is.
It works just fine without it. So I'm curious, how would the banana liqueur change this, do you think? Would it
probably make it even more tropical?
Okay.
I would think.
Because it's a little bit tart, but it's refreshing. It's the kind of thing you want at the end of a long day.
Yeah, on a warm day too, which it is here.
Right.
I'm guessing it's warm in Atlanta as well today.
It is. I think it hit 80 today.
Oh, very nice. So I think we're ready for reading number one.
Reading number one. Okay, so this is in the preface to the book, and it will kind of give listeners the lay of the land and a little bit of background on the story. One of the amazing things about getting older is the change we get to witness over time. My memoir, Among the Maasai, which came out in 2019, told the story of my 2 years as a volunteer English teacher at the first secondary school for Maasai girls in East Africa. In that book, I gave voice to the profound effect working with young Maasai women had on my life. I looked back to the 1990s when a group of Maasai elders began discussing how to help their people face escalating challenges in a rapidly changing world. These elders knew that in order for the Maasai people to endure in the 21st century, they would require different skills and ways of being. They believed that the Maasai needed more access to education and that girls required a special school that would honor their cultural identity and maintain Maasai tradition. And so the Maasai Girls Lutheran Secondary School was born in partnership with Operation Bootstrap Africa, a US-based nonprofit that would fund the school's construction and operation. When I arrived in Tanzania in 1999, the school was still in its infancy, and in many ways, so was I. I was in my mid-20s, an idealistic young American who believed she could make a difference in the world. I had heard about the Maasai Girls' School from an Operation Bootstrap Africa board member who told me about the challenges Maasai women faced in their quest to gain an education. I soon learned that the Maasai are among the poorest people on the planet, and that women and girls often bear the brunt of this poverty. They rise early to milk cows and goats. They cook, clean, and care for children without access to running water or electricity. Many must walk miles just to get the minimum amount of water required to sustain their families. They live in austere, mud-walled homes in places where access to health care is limited and preventable diseases are prevalent. Too many Maasai girls still endure female genital mutilation and forced child marriages as early as age 10 or 11, though both practices are illegal in Tanzania. These challenges mean many Maasai girls are unable to attend school. Some are denied access because their families see more value in a dowry than in an education. Others can't afford even basic school supplies. For many, the workload at home means they don't have time to study. Yet if you ask most Maasai girls if they want an education, they will emphatically tell you that they do. They know it is a pathway out of poverty and into a life where they will have fewer challenges and more choices. When I learned about these stark realities 30 years ago, I was inspired to action. The Maasai Girls' School had an opening for a volunteer English teacher, and as a recent university graduate with a bachelor's degree in English education, I fit the bill. However, I quickly realized I had as much to learn from my Maasai students as I had to teach them. From them, I learned about determination, resiliency, community, and hope. They motivated me to lean into our differences even as we looked for common ground, and to work across cultural boundaries despite the inherent challenges of that work. Their generosity and courage touched my life, expanded my world, and changed my understanding of the plight of women around the world. I came to realize how privileged and rare my experience had been as a white girl growing up in America. While I was teaching at the school, its first class graduated. As those young women decided their next steps after graduation, I saw glimmers of the way the Maasai Girls' School would transform lives, creating ripples of positive change across families, communities, and even the nation of Tanzania. Today, nearly 3 decades later, this book, Lessons in Hope, brings those stories into focus.
Very nice.
Yeah, I like that comment about seeing the change over time. I've really appreciated that as I get older to have this longer history. So, what inspired you to go to Africa? I mean, apart from them saying, "Hey, this opportunity exists," was it a sense of adventure? Was it wanting to see Africa?
I think it was. I think as a university student, I always wanted to study abroad, and it just never happened for me. And so when I heard about this opportunity, I was intrigued. And I think I was particularly moved by the stories of some of the students that I heard, uh, just the challenges that they faced, and understanding as a young English teacher at the time, I came out of the University of North Dakota, as you mentioned earlier. I didn't have a job yet, and it seemed like, well, I'll go do this, and while I'm still young and have the time to do it. And so, yeah, I went.
Very
That's,
nice.
did you know anything about it, or did they give you classes or orientation before you went?
Yes, they did. So I think I had about a month of orientation here in the United States before I went. I also took some language classes here, Swahili language classes. And then when I arrived in country, I spent about 6 weeks at language school in the southern part of Tanzania, also studying Swahili. So that was the extent of my training, I guess,
Are you
before.
fluent in Swahili then?
Ooh, I think fluent would be a strong way to describe what I what I am. Um, I'm I'm functional. I still study it every day on Duolingo. It's one of the
Oh,
language
Very
I
nice.
you'll
study on
have to look me up.
Duolingo.
Yeah, you'll have
Yep.
to look me up on Duolingo.
Yeah.
I'm
So I still study it every day. But I think also because I don't live there anymore, my opportunity to use it is not too frequent. So I would say my
right.
skills are rusty. I understand most of what people are saying, but I have a harder time responding.
I'm much better at understanding. I love studying languages. My daughter actually has her PhD. She studied how people acquire second languages. And
Hmm.
then one of my sons is, I think it's fair to say he's fluent in Indonesian
Indonesian. Yeah.
because he went to, that's what he did in the military. He was a linguist. So I like to think that quite a few of my kids have inherited my love of languages.
Is Swahili kind of like a noun verb or verb noun type language? Is it even totally different from that?
Um, it does follow the pattern of English in that you have a subject, verb, noun kind of a
Mhm.
structure. I think sometimes adjectives come after the nouns instead of before the nouns in English, but it does follow some patterns of English. And, Tanzania is a former British colony. And so you will find these remnants of English in Swahili, where there wasn't at the time a Swahili word for. A good example of it is you must have roundabouts where you are, traffic
We do
roundabouts.
know. Mhm.
Yes.
So in Swahili, a roundabout is called a kipi lefty. And if you think about
Yeah.
the
That's
British driving on the left side of the road, kipi lefty makes sense. But yeah, so we would joke around that any English word can become Swahili if you just add like an I to the end of it, which is not at all true. But
that's
if I
great.
didn't have the right word for something, I would just make it up.
I love
That's
that. That's
great.
great.
I have to ask you, some time ago, I read, I have no idea if this is true, that all those National Geographic movies we grew up seeing in school where the women are running around with no tops on, I was told that they basically made that all up, hired actors, and that that's not true. Do you know anything about that?
Wow. Well, I think you know more than I do about that because
Oh,
yeah, I've not heard that, but
well, I believe
um,
that one of the things I liked about your book, you have so much beautiful photography in there. And I didn't see any women running around without their tops on.
Well,
So,
yeah.
I didn't know what to think of that when I heard it.
Well, there are, so in Tanzania alone, which is, one country on a very large continent, there
Hmm.
are 100, there are over 125 cultural groups in
Okay.
Tanzania. So each of those cultural groups will have their own home language.
Mhm.
And so the Maasai speak Ma, that's their cultural language. Many of them then also speak Swahili because that's the language cultures speak across cultures to one another. And then anyone who's gone to secondary school will also speak English as well. So many Tanzanians speak three language. But in terms of your comment, I guess that's to say that the Maasai are one of many cultural groups. So there may be other cultural groups in Tanzania that
Right.
that that follow a different kind of pattern.
Right. Well, it was interesting reading about the Maasai, and one of the things I came across on the internet was it said they have a distinctive culture. Is there anything more distinctive about them than all these other tribes?
Well, I think they're a very iconic group in Africa generally, and they have been photographed quite a lot. And I think the reason for that is they have a very iconic dress. Like most of the men wear, they're called shukas, and a lot of the times they're a red color, and they carry like a wooden staff, and they're herding cattle and goats across the Serengeti, the Great Rift Valley. And a lot of folks travel to East Africa and Tanzania specifically for tourism. They're wanting to climb Kilimanjaro, which is the highest peak on the continent, or see the Serengeti, see the beautiful animals and landscapes there. And the Maasai are in proximity to that. And the women wear these, they're called ilturesh. They're these big, they're almost like plates that they wear around their necks that are beaded rings. And so they're very iconic in terms of the way they look and the way they dress. And because of their proximity to a lot of places tourists go, they're photographed a lot, and they have appeared in publications like National Geographic. But I think that's one of the things that make them iconic. I think their relationship to cattle is another one.
That brings me to a question I planned on asking after reading too, but I'm flexible. I did read that they are very dependent on cattle for milk, for beef, and for blood. Do they use the blood in cooking?
Um, so the Maasai believe that cattle were given to them by God. So they believe that they were sort of ordained by a higher power to care for the world's cattle. So that's how important cattle are to them. In terms of the blood, I don't think they use it for cooking. I've seen them mix it with milk and drink it.
Really?
And usually they'll just like bleed a little bit of blood out of a cow into a gourd. I actually have one on the desk behind me here, but into a gourd, and they'll fill it with milk and then a little bit of blood, and they'll drink it.
Can you show us the gourd?
I sure can. This is a gourd. Can you see that? Maybe hold
Yes,
it
very
high.
much.
Yeah.
That is very neat.
Yes, you can see, the beadwork on it, and it opens up here at the top. So that's that. And then I can also show you an ilturesh, which is these beaded necklaces that Maasai women wear. So they're, they typically stack them like this. So they would stack multiple rings, and of course, their necks are here.
Right.
But these are all made by the women themselves. So.
Do you ever wear those, or do you mainly keep them for?
I think the jewelry I wear here is a little simpler than that, but I've been given a lot of them as gifts along the way. So I do have many of them.
That's neat. Now, with your experience in education in Africa, how did that impact your thoughts on education in America?
That's an interesting question. So when I came back from Tanzania, I did actually teach for a little while here in the States. We were living in Minnesota at the time. And I think I found it really challenging. And I think it was a matter of, I was teaching in a middle school and kind of begging kids to learn.
Just out of curiosity, which school or which suburb were you in, assuming you were in Minneapolis, St. Paul?
Yeah, it was a charter school, and it was located in Brooklyn Center.
You were right in my backyard.
Brooklyn
Yeah.
Park.
Yeah, I was in Brooklyn Park for 17 years before we left.
So it was a tough environment to come back to. I think because I'd come from a place where kids were like begging to go to school, begging for an education, so grateful to be at school, and to kind of a setting that was the opposite in terms of kids just really didn't want to be at school. It seemed like I was spending a lot of time dealing with, classroom management issues.
Yes. Yep. I taught for a few years, and primarily I taught individual music lessons. That's a whole different ball of wax from teaching in a classroom. And I don't know about you, but for me, I found the kids were great. It was the parents that were the issue. And there was a group that the other parents called the triumvirate. And one day it was my turn. And I don't feel bad because they went after every teacher sooner or later. And they drove the second grade teacher off entirely. They wore 30 pounds off me
Yeah,
in
that's true.
6 weeks. They
Mm.
put me under so much stress. And, at that point, and I think it's a little bit of what you're talking about, maybe a different aspect or angle. But so how long did you stick with Brooklyn Center?
I was there.
I think my son even went to the middle school there. I'm not sure how many there are, but he was at one of the middle schools in Brooklyn Center. But it would have been after you were there, I think.
I was there a couple of years, and I guess I'll say I have tremendous respect for teachers and for the work that they
Yep.
do. And
Yes.
I think I realized after those 2 years that my calling was probably not in a classroom. And you talked a little bit about what I do otherwise. Museums are informal learning environments, and um, that seems to be a better fit for my life's calling.
Well, and I felt very much the same. I really loved teaching in the classroom. I really did. I loved the kids, but there are other issues. So I think we're about ready for drink number two.
Alrighty. Well, the next one I have is called a Dawa, which you may or may not know in Kenyan means medicine. So it's actually their national cocktail, and it's built on lime, honey, and vodka. So we're going to start off as you. It sounds like, or it looks like, you seem to know what I'm talking
I
about.
do.
So hopefully,
Yeah, dawa is another Swahili word, and it does in fact mean medicine. Hmm.
very good. Well, I put some sugar at the bottom of a tumbler, and then now I'm putting in what basically amounts to a whole lime in each glass, but it's been cut up, not really minced, just kind of sliced up. And I'm going to muddle that here. So we have about a teaspoon of sugar to offset the tartness of the lime. And then, are you familiar? I don't know the foundations of the drink and things, but when it comes to the lime, is that what kind of constitutes that medicinal aspect, or is it more the combination of that with some alcohol and sugar and other things?
Well, I think probably the original dawa, when the British colonists came to Tanzania, would have been a gin and tonic, and
Of
they
course.
yeah, and they would have used the tonic with quinine for malaria prevention.
Ah, very
And so,
nice. Yes.
yeah, a gin and tonic could be considered dawa, in fact.
Okay.
Well, I have often frequently considered a gin and tonic to be
So,
my personal dawa.
yeah, so this is just a sweeter, more pleasant version of that, probably.
Yes.
All right, he's pouring in without measuring. This may be a fun night by the time I'm done with this.
Well, I put in a couple ounces of vodka to go in with the lime and the sugar, and now I'm adding honey in order to get the sweetness to offset some of the lime. So we'll see how well that works, and I'll also add some ice before I'm totally done. Some of these juices and everything come together here. And then if it turns out to be too tart, Laura, I can add more honey to it.
Okay.
So
Yeah, that's usually the first thing I'm going to complain about is a drink that's too tart.
great.
We're not judgmental, but we don't do tarts around here.
Alrighty. Here we have our medicine, our dawa.
Cheers.
Cheers
I'm a
indeed.
little nervous about anything packed with lime. Okay, I can do this.
Right.
I can do this.
Give it a try. Give it a try.
It's like medicine.
I will add some more
More
honey to
honey.
Laura's.
Could you just add maybe about 5 times what you just put in
Yeah,
there?
right. Let's see how that works. Mine, I thought, came out pretty well. I thought it was pretty balanced, but
It's still a little bit tart.
Mhm.
Better. Yeah.
Mhm.
Not sure I'll finish
Mm.
this, but there it is. If you can see that with all the lime in
Mhm.
there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
honey. So,
So
and
the Maasai do make their own honey. They hang
okay.
hollow logs in trees. It's
Mhm.
called asali in
Oh, very neat.
Swahili.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we have a beehive sitting in our garage, and that's our next project is
Oh,
to
great.
set up the beehive.
Yeah.
And thank you, Chris. He bought me the beekeeper suit.
I'm not going there myself. I'll be happy to watch from a good several hundred yards away.
Thank you. Thank you for throwing me under the beehive.
Right.
Reading number 2.
I grew up in that boma over there. She points to a traditionally built mud and dung structure about 200 yards behind her. The small round hut has a roof made of dried grass and is surrounded by a ready-made fence of thorny tree branches. Imagine a girl from this remote village going to school. The Maasai Girls' School changed my life and my family's life too. That school is giving girls an opportunity to understand themselves, to gain confidence, and to have careers. The Maasai Girls' School is also preparing girls to serve the Maasai community. When you go to every village in Monduli, Longido, Simanjiro, Kiteto, and Ngorongoro, you will find the Maasai Girls' School graduates in all those districts. Every one in her own way shows the benefits of education. I asked Neema to tell me how she is serving the Maasai community. Now I am a teacher, she says. I am teaching others, but my husband and I are also helping less privileged students to go to school. Many women now want their children to go to school, but they have nothing. Getting school uniforms, exercise books, and other school supplies is a problem. We have organized as a family to help at least 20 children each year to go to school so they can start Form 1. We are also supporting women with small loans that help them to start businesses so they can support their families. Her voice lifts with energy. In 2020, I ran for public office to represent the Monduli district in Parliament. I was one of only 2 women who ran among 22 men. I did not win the election, but I tried. Why did I do that? Because I want to help my community. She lifts her chin and sets her jaw in a defiant way. There are some problems that I can solve as a teacher and as a mere person, but as a member of parliament, I could have more influence to solve bigger problems. I have that dream of being a member of parliament. Neema forges on with the intensity of a politician on the campaign trail. For example, we have a water problem in Losimangori. The water we use comes from a dam, and it is not reliable or clean. Water shortages create problems for girls too. They must travel long distances to fetch water from the dam. They carry the water in buckets on their heads, and this difficult task means they don't have time to go to school. Some of them have been raped along the way or kidnapped and married by force. We need help to get clean piped water, which solves more than one problem. Neema's eyes are fiery now because this problem is personal to her. She knows these girls, and their safety is her concern. Even though I didn't win a seat in Parliament, afterwards I ran and was elected as a member of the District Central Committee. My agenda has been forming a special fund to support children who are struggling to join secondary school and creating awareness about the challenges my village faces, such as the water problem. When we finish the interview, Neema hurries off to escort her parents back to our seats under the acacia tree. Her mother wears pastel green and yellow checked swaths of fabric with 2 beautifully beaded ilturesh around her neck, while Neema's father appears the quintessential Maasai man in his deep blue mashuka. As I watch them approach, I note that Neema looks like a younger version of her mother. Their faces and eyes are a matched set. As Neema carefully guides her mother to a chair near me, I realize her mother is nearly blind. Though I suspect Neema's parents are probably only in their early 60s, they appear elderly and a little fragile. Before I can ask an interview question, Neema's father jumps in with his own comments while Neema serves as his translator. His tone is earnest and serious as he tells me. In the past, I didn't know the importance of education. But after Neema went to school, I really supported it and wished others would go to school too. She has built a house for us, and she has taught us and other children in our community. Her mother adds, she got rid of the grass house, and she has been able to take me to the hospital. Before she went to school, when I was sick, I couldn't even go to the hospital. I thank her very much because other Maasai children are not able to take their parents to the hospital or build them houses.
That was a wonderful contrast, I think, in everything from tradition and culture to future aspirations. That was I think, a really neat way you wrote that.
How much have things changed from when you were there in 1999 to, I think this is a very recent interview, where she's talking about the pipeline?
Yeah. So this book that I'm reading from right now came out in just last year, last September, and all
Okay.
the interviews. I interviewed about 50 people for the book, uh, including parents of graduates, spouses of graduates, children of graduates, employers of graduates, and then the
Nice.
graduates themselves. And you alluded earlier to the photography. I traveled with two Tanzanian photographers who photographed all these women.
Mhm.
And I think it really adds to the story to be able to see these women and their surroundings.
I
Very
think
much so.
so. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what percentage of how has the percentage changed of the girls that were going to school when you started there, when the school
Mm.
was brand new, to
Right.
now?
Right. Um, so the school started with something like 40 students, and now, and that was with one class. So each class had about, 40 or so students. And now I think they have about 350 students.
Oh, neat.
Yeah. So the school itself has grown. Like, we started with one classroom. In one of the stories in the book, a young woman talks about what it was like to be there when the school was under construction. So obviously, a lot more girls are being served by that school. And I would say generally the attitude toward education is shifting, and more parents are wanting to see their daughters go to school. The challenge still remains that there's not a robust public secondary education system in Tanzania. So what that means is that only the brightest, the highest scorers on tests are the ones who are able to get slots in those public schools. Everyone else is needing to find a place in a private school, and there are also many of those in Tanzania. But if you're a Maasai family and you maybe have 7 to 10 children, and you're living on, less than $2 a day, and it costs about $1,200 annually to send a kid to secondary school, you can see how it's just not feasible to be able to send all your children to school. And for most families, if they have a choice, they'll send the eldest male to school. And so still a lot of Maasai women, young girls, face barriers to getting to school, due to poverty predominantly, but also culture as well. So things are changing. They're changing slowly. Although, granted, this is like what now? Just last year, the school celebrated its 30-year anniversary. So you can see in 30 years, like, profound change, and that it's generational change. In the next story I'll read, I talk a little bit about this woman is a mother. Almost all these women are mothers, but their attitudes and their wishes for their own children are I think,
Right.
um, very
You must
aspirational.
you must find that has to be a very neat legacy from your original, like you said, 30 or 40 to 10 times more than that. That has to be, I think, a sense of accomplishment, but a sense of marvel also that these things are advancing the way they are.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, I think when I left Tanzania in 2000, um, I wasn't sure what my involvement would be beyond those 2 years I lived there. And it sort of has kept calling me back for a variety of reasons. And I think it's because of the relationships I've built there.
Right.
Um, and I think that the needs I witnessed and saw left a big impression on me.
Sure.
And I've wanted to continue to be involved. But one of the great rewards of that is that some of these women in this book I saw walk into the school. Like, I saw them come in from some remote area with nothing but the clothes on their back. And so now we have women who founded schools. We have, I think, the only female Maasai speaking pediatrician in the world. So, you know, now Maasai mamas can come in and talk to another Maasai mama in their own language.
That's
So you just
awesome.
think about the impact of that.
So one thing I was really curious about as I read, obviously there are some things that I think are pretty horrible, like the female genital mutilation.
Yes.
But there's also this aspect of, are they kind of finding a balance between keeping the best parts of their culture while adapting to the 21st century? Or are they in danger of really losing that culture that was distinct?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a shade of gray. It's both and. I did. There is one interview where a woman talks about what her experience was of female genital mutilation,
Mm.
and she talks a bit about how that's so central to the culture. And what I mean by that is it's a coming of age ceremony, and you can think about other coming of age ceremonies that we have in Western culture that don't do harm to people, but are still very central to identity. And these women really aren't women until they go through this ceremony. And so she talks about the ways in which a lot of the graduates of this school are working to continue the ceremony, which would be special food and singing and dancing, gathering of family without the physical act of
Oh, well,
cutting.
that's at least okay.
Yep. And so I think they are working for changes around some of those culturally harmful practices. The other question people frequently ask me is like, how many of them go back to their culture? Maybe they go to school and they never return. And one of the sort of recurring themes in the interviews I did is just how engaged these women still are with their families and with their culture. That they may not any longer live in the boma, the traditional home, because they need to have wage earning employment in more urban areas, but they're still sending money, they're still returning, they're
Mhm.
still involved.
Hmm. And how is it for the boys? You talked about the girls walking miles to get water. Do the boys also do that, or what is their role in the traditional culture?
So for girls, cooking, cleaning, caring for younger siblings, gathering water, those are the roles of women and girls. Men are, and women do work with some livestock, but livestock is more the realm of men. And
Hmm.
so men are often off herding goats to where they can find grass or to water. So that's kind of how those gender roles break out.
Okay.
I guess part of my question on that would be, is it more of a matriarchal or patriarchal system in terms of who the decision makers, let's say, for the culture really are?
It's very patriarchal.
Hmm.
Um, so daughters are traded for cattle, and that's generally a father or an elder brother's decision. So yeah, like a girl reaches
Shoot.
puberty, she goes through
I
this
had
coming of
seven
age.
sons. I didn't have that many daughters. Cattle.
Well,
We
yeah,
could
and so
fill their
daughters are quite
pasture.
valuable, right? Because
Yeah.
you can get more cattle, which is, the commodity. You can
Right.
get more cattle for your daughters. But yes, men are making those decisions.
Hmm. We are all ready for drink number 3 already.
Yes, this is more South African. It's called an Ama-lekkerlicious, if you've ever
Hmm,
heard of anything like that. It
haven't.
it's a South African brandy cocktail. So what we're going to first do is we're going to take a just kind of a rocks glass, and we're going to actually dip the edge of the rocks glass in some sherbet to give that, kind of sweet, kind of tart, kind of an angle to it. And then
That looks really
it
good.
actually looks really neat. And I'll probably put just a little bit of ice in the shaker. And we're going to start off with some,
Can you see that?
Oh, that looks
Doesn't
nice.
that look good?
yes,
Yeah.
we're going to start off with a little bit of brandy and some peach syrup, some cranberry juice. This is a very fruit forward cocktail. A little bit of lemon juice, a little bit of some bitters in order to
Hmm.
offset all the sweetness of everything we have, and also to make it, I think, interestingly herbal, which is going to be good. So we're going to shake all of that stuff in the shaker, and I think I'll probably put a little bit of ice in the glass, and then I'll strain this particular cocktail into it. And because of the sherbet on the rim, we're going to get a nice sweet flavor to go along with all of the other fruit flavors that are coming along for the ride. So here's, I don't know if you can see it,
Yeah, it looks pretty.
very pretty and
Very pink.
very interesting. So cheers.
Cheers. Even this one is a little bit tart.
Well, the cranberry juice, I might have put a little bit too much
Yeah.
of that in. But yeah, I think with the sherbet and everything, though, it's
Yeah,
got a very interesting
that
flavor.
makes it nice and sweet when you get that sherbet off. Do you have experience with African drinks? Do they tend to be tart?
I don't have a lot of experience with it. In the area where we were, about the only thing we could get was beer.
Oh,
So
okay.
they have safari beer and they have a Kilimanjaro beer.
Hmm.
So we could get that. And then the Maasai do make something called pombe, which is, I don't even know how to describe pombe. But it's a very strong, I think it's probably honey based a liquor.
Hmm.
But no, we didn't do a lot of drinks where we were.
I was just curious after having three that all are distinctly tart. If
Hmm.
we were to do
And fruity.
another 10 more, is that sort of a feature, or did you just happen to pick three? The three that are
Right.
tart. So I don't know if you can see he filled mine with sherbet, so it's a little less tart.
Oh, yeah, that'll
So
sweeten it up.
Yes.
yeah, tart is not really my thing. So go ahead, reading number three.
The sound of a child's laughter fills the air as I sit down to talk with Jacqueline Chambulo Lekule. There is a playground just down the hill from the grassy area where we sit on the outskirts of Arusha. As Jacqueline and I begin talking, we are watching her daughter, Timinoy, run between the seesaw and the climb and slide fort. Timinoy is delighted to have an adult playmate in my husband, Mark, who is following her back and forth across the playground. He is jokingly shooting me a look of fatigue, all the while encouraging Timinoy's exuberance by cheering her on as he operates one end of the seesaw with his arms and spotting her as she climbs up and slides down the fort like structure. An adorable streak of sound and energy, Timinoy is clearly an active, happy child. Jacqueline smiles as she tells me Timinoy is 5 years old and the youngest of her three children. Jacqueline knows firsthand about the importance of play and movement to the healthy growth and development of children, not only because she is a mother, but also because she works as an occupational therapist at Kafika House, a treatment facility for Tanzanian children receiving pre and post operative care and rehabilitation for surgically correctable disabilities such as a cleft lip or palate, club foot, hydrocephalus, or spina bifida. While Mark continues to entertain Timinoy, Jacqueline and I begin our interview. I ask her to tell me about her work at Kafika House. We treat children with any disability that requires corrective surgery, she explains. The work at Kafika House is very important because many of the children come from villages where they don't have access to treatment. Furthermore, their families can't afford treatment. When children come to Kafika House, they get treatment that changes their lives. They can go back to school, they can play with others, they can attend to their daily activities independently without their parents' help. As Jacqueline explains her work, I think about the stigmas people with disabilities face in nearly every culture around the world: the stares, the whispers, the exclusion, the unkindness. From my years of living in Tanzania, I recall seeing disabled children and adults on Arusha's streets begging for food and money. Here in Tanzania, people with disabilities are not only often ostracized from their communities, but also forced to navigate the world without accessible design features and equipment that could make everyday life easier. The unjust reality that many of the world's disabled children have treatable conditions and yet must live without access to that treatment because of poverty is particularly difficult to accept. However, as Jacqueline describes her work at Kafika House, I imagine a different world, one where disabled Tanzanian children are surrounded by others like them, and where they are given life changing care by adults like Jacqueline who show acceptance and support. The word Kafika means arrived in Swahili, and I like the image of Kafika House offering a sense of arrival to disabled children and their parents, providing a soft landing where burdens are removed and hope is restored. We educate communities across Tanzania about disabilities and the treatments available, transforming stigma into understanding and reaching children who can benefit from our program, Jacqueline tells me. After surgery, children begin an intensive rehabilitation program to start adjusting to their new lives. This is a big part of my job as an occupational therapist. Most children stay at Kafika House for about 3 months, so in a short period of time, their lives are transformed.
I just have
Very
to tell
nice.
you something funny. I totally misread that. I didn't see the I, so I was calling it the Kafka house.
Yeah, that's different.
The stories,
Very different. Yeah.
the stories write themselves, don't they?
Yes.
Although it's appropriate, they are undergoing a metamorphosis of
They
sorts.
are. Yeah.
So is there a cultural reason why they're so ostracized?
That's a good question. I mean, I think the root of it is that they're seen as burdens,
Oh,
as they require extra care, um, and attention. And I think if you're living in a situation where you lack uh, basic necessities, the idea of having extra responsibilities and extra expenses is something that's quite difficult.
Right. Do they tend to be ostracized even by their own parents?
I think it varies, but I think the answer is often yes. I think a lot of the children who go to Kafika House, though, have a parent there with them, probably a mother, usually.
Okay, so that's something else that's gradually changing.
I do think it is, yes.
Yeah.
Well, and I
Well,
think a big part of Kafika's House mission is to help educate people. I mean, because I think the other piece is sometimes disabilities are seen as the work of the devil or
I
mm,
wonder.
some sort of other curse.
Right.
And so, helping educate people about where disabilities come from also eliminates some of those stigmas.
What do they have a faith or what is their kind of spiritual uh, belief?
So it varies in Tanzania. Tanzania is about, I would say, 30% Muslim, and that influence comes from the Indian Ocean, and
right.
you know, so a lot of Muslims are on the coast, are in the coastal areas, and then inland about 30% is Christian, and that's the work largely of Lutheran and Catholic missionaries. Um, and then the other 30% is a variety of other indigenous religions. And
Okay.
so many Maasai are Christian, a few are Muslim, but the traditional Maasai beliefs are, I guess, a little difficult to describe, but they do have witch doctors.
Okay.
They do take animals to the mountain for sacrifice, so that it's a traditional indigenous belief system.
Okay. I tried to take my animal, well, not for sacrifice, but to go to freezer camp, and he trampled me.
Well, you might expect that, but
So I hope they have better luck.
right.
I'm curious, what kind of major changes do you see in yourself as a result of your time there?
Mm. Yeah, I suppose that's hard to characterize. I think I'm a lot more aware of my privilege. um, I think sometimes it's easy to point to the things in your life that aren't right, but when you sort of look at the big picture of what other people in the world, particularly women, are coping with and living with, it does put things in perspective. So I think that probably that's one of the big learnings, is just how privileged I am, and I think that that's created in me a certain sense of responsibility to respond.
And I think it creates a lot of gratitude too. Now, I grew up in the military, and so I didn't get to Africa, but my first years were in Germany. And it's very interesting when you're growing up, even on a Western military base, but hearing about America. And it gives you a very different sense of who you are in comparison to the whole world. So I think those are great experiences. Now, how did you get from, I have to ask you this first. I've always pronounced it Tanzania. Did the pronunciation change, or is it sometimes one, sometimes the other, or am I
Well,
just flat out wrong?
I think the emphasis falls differently. Like, I think if you hear a Tanzanian say the word, it will sound different to you than the way I say it.
Uh-huh.
So I don't know that it's sort of like the country of Qatar. You hear some people say it Qatar and others say Qatar. So
Butter and guitar and
Could it be though also based on Tasmania, And especially as
Yeah,
a cartoon, the Tasmanian devil and all,
It's
that we
possible.
would then go, oh, Tanzania versus Tanzania.
Yeah.
right.
Well, when I heard you pronounce it, I just realized I'm sure I've heard it pronounced Tanzania in the past. I'm going to assume you know more than I do, but then I didn't know. Is it just one of those countries that's pronounced differently, or am I flat out wrong, or did the pronunciation change? Which,
I
like
don't believe
we've
the pronunciation changed. I don't
okay,
think that.
okay. Well, how did you get from Tanzania to designing exhibits? What was that path?
Yeah, right. Well, so I mentioned earlier in our conversation that I taught for a couple of years, and when I decided to switch gears there, I worked for a little while as a grant writer, and then I ended up taking a job with a large engineering and landscape architecture firm, largely doing marketing and business proposals for them. And that is largely as my background as a writer, I think. And I picked up some graphic design along the way there, but there was a landscape architect in that firm who started using me to do some of the signs you read when you go to parks. So, you know, you are standing, I happen to have just traveled to the Grand Canyon a couple weeks ago, and you're standing on the rim of the Grand Canyon and you see these signs that kind of tell you about the geology of what you're looking at. Well, so he was having me do a lot of those types of signs for gardens that he was producing. And I thought, you know, there's got to be more to this than just these signs. You know, I really enjoy this work. And um, so at that point, I went back and got a certification in something called interpretive planning. So my field is called interpretation, which isn't like language interpretation, it's like interpreting cultural, natural, and historical resources for the general public. So I got a certification in that, and then I went to work for a consulting firm that did that full time, and so started doing that full time, and that was 21 years ago. So I've been doing it for a long time.
Very nice.
I find it fascinating the paths our lives take. Having a
Yes.
degree in music, it's interesting to see what all my fellow, bachelors of arts in music ended up doing. Like one is a pilot. How do you get from playing piano to pilot?
Catch me if you can.
Right, right. I guess. What are some of the museums and parks you've designed for?
Well, so right now I'm working for the Chickasaw Nation. They're developing a new cultural heritage center in Mississippi, which is their traditional homeland. They were removed in the 1830s to Oklahoma. So most of them live in Oklahoma, but they still have an interest in their traditional homeland and are wanting to tell the story of their culture and history in that place. I've been working on that for about 3 years, and they're hoping that it will
Wow.
open either later this year or next. So I'm doing that. I'm also working in Ohio right now on an exhibit about global poverty.
Mhm.
So you can see how some of my projects start to link to my work in Tanzania in some ways, in terms of
Right.
telling the story of global poverty, working with an indigenous community to help share stories of culture. I've done a little bit of work for the National Park Service. So if you drive the Blue Ridge Parkway, you will
Oh,
probably stop.
yes.
Yeah, you'll stop at some pullouts, and you'll see some kiosks and signs there. Those were likely written and designed by me. I also did a maritime museum in Sturgeon Bay, Door County, which may be
Oh,
familiar.
very
We
nice.
know Door County.
Yes.
Well, what's next for you? Will there be more books on Tanzania?
That's a good question. I never thought I would write two of them.
Oh, okay.
I wrote the first one, which is a memoir. You know, it tells about those 2 years I spent teaching there
Mhm.
and what that was like as a young American. And I kind of thought that was my book. That was the one I was going to do. And then Operation Bootstrap Africa, which is the US-based nonprofit that's funded a lot of this work, came to me about 4 years ago, I guess, and said, hey, the school has a 30-year anniversary and we have a 60-year anniversary, and we want to produce a book. And we think that it would be really interesting to tell the stories of what's happened to some of these
Mhm.
women. And so that started a 2-year process of me spending time in Tanzania, back and forth a fair amount, all the interviews, and that's why the second book.
Okay.
So I guess if someone asked me to write another book, I might do it. But
Where can people find you online?
JulietCutler.com. That's JULIET Cutler, CUTLER.com.
And where can we find us and you, Laura?
You can find us at booksandbrews.net, also our YouTube channel where I do Books and Brews Light, and that's youtube.com @books and brews spelled out. You can find me and all my books at lauravosica.com, and you should go there if you love time travel, and you should love time travel, not that
Most
I'm
people should.
opinionated,
Right, yes.
but you would really love James Douglas. You can find our sponsor, Gabriel's Horn Press, at gabrielshornpress.com. Surprise name there, huh? And you can find the ram who trampled me and all the animals who didn't trample me, which includes chickens and rabbits. And
Soon.
Bear, Boo Bear kind of tramples.
He tramples us
Yeah,
regularly.
Boo Bear is a dog. He looks a little bit like Yeti.
He's a cross between Mount McKinley and a Yeti.
Yep.
Yes.
And you can
he's
find
very
all
large.
of them at glenmerrillfarms.wordpress.com.
And do we, first of all, have any upcoming events for you?
I'm doing a few local events here. I'm actually meeting with a bookstore owner on Friday about an event just outside of Atlanta. I'm speaking to a women's network here where I live. And then I've got another event in North Atlanta. I think that one's still being scheduled, but I think it's probably likely not to happen till September, but it's at the Crazy Lady Bookshop. And I just kind of like the name of that bookshop.
That is a neat bookshop name.
Is that all on your website people can find?
It is,
Okay,
yeah. All those
fantastic.
events are on.
Very good. And so who do we have coming next month, Laura?
We have quite a few people queued up, and I say that to Dr. Q.
Good luck. Right, yes.
We have next month Laura Creedle, who writes horror. After that, J.K. Divya, who writes dark fantasy, mythological horror, and paranormal. I have no clue if we're talking to her about one or all of those.
Interesting.
We have an explosive interview with Barry
Yes.
a former FBI master bomb technician. And
who's going to be the bomb?
Right. Hopefully he won't bomb. I'm actually very interested to talk to him because that's what my brother-in-law did. He deactivated bombs. Am I even using the right word?
Well, close enough.
Close enough. Okay, and in July, we have Randy Lurch, who is a former Major League Baseball player, talking about his book called, I believe it's called God in the Bullpen.
I'm guessing he's going to be a big hit.
Or he'll strike out.
That's
It's a bullpen, right? That's the term.
For pitchers, definitely.
Okay, I'm not much into sports, so I'm going to have to, brush up.
Brush up, yes.
Right. The only way I know how many are on a baseball team is because everybody kept saying in relation to my children, you have enough for a baseball team.
Indeed you do.
And I finally figured out how many are on a baseball team.
Now you have enough to go with the manager.
Yes, I do. So thank you very much for being on the program. It was a delight.
Cheers.
Cheers.